Dear
Дорогие
friends,
друзья, всем
hello
здравствуйте!
everyone. We are
Мы
in
на
touch
связи с
with
Валерием
Valery
Уваровым
Uvarov.
и
Valery
записываем
and
с
I are
Валерием
recording a
очень
very
интересный
interesting
курс.
course.
Почему,
Why?
зачем, с
Why?
какой
For
целью
what
Валерий
purpose?
вам сейчас
Valery will tell
поведает.
you now.
Good afternoon, everyone. Indeed, our joint work with Olya led to the understanding that the information that has begun to manifest itself in our joint conversations today requires very wide dissemination. And this is due to the fact that it covers all stages of the development of our civilization. It is fundamentally important to emphasize here that all those events that in one way or another influenced our civilization, and each of us, have a very long prehistory. It all started a few tens of thousands of years ago. It began in the solar system at the very time when the united civilization of the solar system, which consisted of two main planets, Mars and Phaidon, was developing very actively. In fact, as a result of which this very war of the gods began, which we will also talk about on the course. But when the war of the gods ended and the curators came here, events began to occur in the solar system, which in no case can be separated from the fate of the planet Earth. First of all, a complete restructuring of the solar system was carried out due to those catastrophic events that were associated with the end of the War of the Gods. In my meetings with Olya, I have mentioned and sometimes mentioned the catastrophe in the solar system. It was the moment when the solar system passed through a stream of asteroids, and the end of the War of the Gods just coincided with this moment, as a result of which the planet Tiamat died. The planet Mars has lost its ecosystem. At that moment, a new planet was introduced into the solar system, which is referred to as the planet Nibiru. But we must now pay attention to the most important aspect of this situation. The restructuring of the solar system required or resulted that everything has changed global energetically, the solar system. Those who are engaged in esotericism understand very well that these cyclical processes are primarily associated with the Stargate factor, because it is impossible to overcome gigantic distances of hundreds and sometimes millions of solar years in a conventional way. The transition takes place through Cash's corridors. Accordingly, at the moment when events came to the most critical moment, I mean this is the end of the War of the Gods, the chrono corridor was opened, the curators came here, and the first thing they did was they gathered the population of the planet Tiamat and the planet Mars to a new planet and moved it beyond the Sun into our orbit. Thus, they limited the possibilities of this allied civilization, which consisted of two planets. We, I mean the planet Earth, we were in the same system. Accordingly, when the solar system was closed from external influences and from external interaction with the civilizations of the galaxy, this subsequently led to the beginning of a degradation period in which, and here let's evaluate it with you. Let's be aware of what happened. Because without awareness of this factor of the path of evolution, as we imagine it, as we strive for it, no, it is impossible. So, look, the solar system is closed by a special membrane through which you can pass, which is called only by special permission. Accordingly, this suggests that any attempts to establish a contact with the outside space is doomed to failure. I will not argue with those people who will claim that there are contacts for today, and so on. And so they communicate there. It's an active process. We will exhaust a huge amount of information, and the question is what? In the book The Rod of Egger, published back in 2004 year, I published material called The Set Factor and the Apop Factor. This is the most important priestly material that formed the central aspect of the doctrine of spiritual development, the doctrine of how to go out into the light. Not just into the light of the divine Ra, but into contact with external civilizations in cooperation with which you can significantly accelerate and enrich your evolutionary process of civilization development. So, what I would like to draw your attention. The system is closed. All those contacts that are being made today are 999,999 and so on. These are contacts with the internal system. These are contacts with the set. In fact, these are contacts with Lucifer. Of course, they are designed in such a way that the person does not understand to whom he communicates. But now our conversation is not about that, but that you first realized these pins are not from that world, to which mentally you are aiming for. Next, which is very important. If you rest your horn and do everything that modern Christianity teaches you, then look at the fate of the leading teachers, recognized by the whole world as Jeta Krishnamurti, Roman Maharishi, B.B. Canada, Shariva Rabinda, Mira Alfasa, Nisargadatta Maharaj, and so on. They all died of cancer. And there is a clear warning about this. What is important is that those remnants, let's say those people who did not go to Marduk with the civilization of the planet Tiamat and the planet Mars, those who at the moment of this great transition, let's call it really was the transition to the state of the solar system, from one quality to another quality, they came to Earth, they chose this path, and they began to transmit information to people. This is the most important information that was collected by these people over a millennium of their development. The level of development at that time was incomparable with ours in height and significance. We are going to talk about this knowledge, which they managed to pass on to their children, and they really had children. And it was this chain of these very people that later formed, for example, the institution of Tsarist power. Why was Pharaoh considered the son of the gods? Because he was an energy carrier. We are now talking about the Warna gene, but this is not really a gene. We are talking about a certain power in a person that exists, and that needs to be developed. And that's miraculously preserved the knowledge of which we will speak on the course. It is priceless. It's not in the sources. I have shoveled everything that is possible in order to find a language suitable for communicating with you, so that the images that I will use will be understandable to you. Well, no, I didn't find it, to my great regret. Therefore, we will rely mainly on science, because, for example, in neurology, in the science of the structure of the brain, in fact, the vascular system, endocrine, there are many clues that we can use. And bringing these two disciplines together as science in the classical sense and esotericism, we can and we will find an opportunity to understand each other. I will pass on to you this knowledge, which at one time, and I want to return to this in particular, was passed on to children who, by the way, were called Anunnaki.
Которые в свое время, и я хочу к этому особо вернуться, были переданы детям, которых, кстати говоря, и называли Ануннаками.
Anunnaki is a descendant of Anu. Anu is the supreme ruler of the united civilization of Mars and the planet Tiamat. Sometimes we call this planet Phaidon. And this is very important because I want to draw your attention to the fact that when the information was transmitted, it was purely scientific information. There was no spiritual or near-spiritual chatter, which today is overflowing with all our esoteric literature. It was about specific things. About how the human energy system really works. How is it integrated into the structure of the universe? What needs to be avoided? What needs to be emphasized in the development of one's inner energy abilities? In order to avoid the set factor, deception, the great cosmic deception, in order to avoid the apop factor. This is the danger of oncology. How to form this channel, which will literally break through the membrane that exists and which closes our civilization. The entire solar system from external information interaction.
Мембрану, которая существует и которая закрывает нашу цивилизацию, всю Солнечную систему от внешнего информационного взаимодействия.
That's why our contacts are limited.
И ограничены.
There are practically none. I'll tell you that over the past 200 years, I know what I'm talking about. There have been only two normal, honest contacts.
Нормальных, честных контактов было всего два.
Two people. So let's move on.
Идем дальше.
So the question is, I would like to clarify why this information is needed
Почему
right
именно
now.
сейчас эта информация нужна?
Because at the moment when the decision was made to rebuild the essence of the spiritual content of the solar system, the process of degradation was included.
Духовного содержания Солнечной системы был включен процесс деградации.
This process involved not only the restructuring of the solar system, but we will talk later about the fact that nothing could have happened without the restructuring of the solar system.
Ничего произойти бы и не могло.
Any restructuring is fundamentally important.
Важна.
So, this is in a period of 15,000 years, which is now rapidly rushing to its conclusion.
Стремительно несется к своему завершению.
In this phase, when, as we say, good fights evil, we must consciously take very important steps.
Мы должны предпринять осознанно очень важные шаги.
One of the problems with spiritual chatter, which overflows the space, is that humanity has been convinced that light and good will definitely defeat evil.
Что свет и добро однозначно победит зло.
This is the wrong position. The winner is the one who will be more. Therefore, now it is extremely important, first of all, to return to people the knowledge that will help them make a choice, which will determine what is a plus, what is a minus, which will give people who are interested in this the opportunity for real energy growth, knowledge, and the opportunity to take their personal part in this final phase, in this final stage of spiritual development. There are transformations, first of all, of the planet Earth, because we live here today. We kind of understand that we are representatives of the solar system, but in fact there are not. We are not only.
В первую очередь планета Земля, потому что мы на сегодня живем здесь, мы как бы понимаем, что мы представители Солнечной системы, но на самом деле нет. Мы не только.
There is also the planet Marduk, inhabited by our spiritual genetic ancestors, who are at a much higher level of development than we are. And the problem is that in the very near future, we will experience a very powerful solar and magnetic storm. This magnetic storm, it will lead to the fact that in addition to the catastrophes and events that we have been experiencing for the last 10 years, this impact will have a negative impact on the stability of the planets of the solar system.
Это воздействие окажет негативное влияние на устойчивость планет Солнечной системы.
This planet is Marduk. It will appear from behind the sun. And here it is very important that humanity does not do stupid things.
Чтобы человечество не наделало глупостей.
Hollywood has made so many films in recent decades about the fact that aliens are the last bastards in general. They need to be wedded. In the language of our president, that there is a danger that when those, much more developed, will be forced to make efforts to stabilize their planet during a powerful solar magnetic storm, and it will be unprecedented in power.
Период мощной солнечной магнитной бури, она будет небывалой по мощности.
There have not been such in the last millennia for a very, very long time.
Очень давно.
And at this moment, the main thing is that someone does not reach out to press the button. Like aliens want to occupy us. Let it be long, but I think you understand what I'm talking about. We ourselves do not have the opportunity to take part in the process of stabilizing the planet Earth either. It will be a global cosmic process, and I think it will happen soon enough. Not only that, we learn that we are not really alone in the solar system after all. We are most likely to encounter with a very high degree of probability those who live on Mars, more precisely on the planet Marduk, who left Eaton's Mars. I want to warn you right away, I have said this several times, those who live there, on Marduk, they are quite aggressive like us. And this is where you understand that if we do the wrong thing, then we are waiting for very unpleasant consequences. That is why we need to begin to realize our real place in all this cosmic history. This is one of the most important reasons why I have recently begun to pay attention to the role of women in the history of civilization. This role is unique, and it is for this reason that when the long degradation process began, it is also a process of struggle, in which Lucifer participated. He does not participate to this day. The first blow that was inflicted on the status of a woman. And as soon as this happened, unique opportunities were formed for the effective degradation of the rest of the male population. In general, therefore, at this critical moment, women will take the stage. We must understand, and I want to warn humanity, that we should not interfere with this process. We must contribute to this process. I tell the men. And there should be no mistake here. So we will talk as much as possible about this factor, about this event, about women, about this. I'm still using the word order, a female order. Sometimes this name flew past me, and although it's not quite true. But what is important in essence, if you translate this phrase, it largely corresponds to that purpose.
Словосочетание Бена Гетца говорит, оно во многом соответствует тому назначению.
Here we will talk about this too. We will talk about the masculine and feminine principles, about their true possibilities, because spiritual development is impossible without a harmonious fusion of these two principles. In other words, we can talk about this period a lot, about the period, how much knowledge was transferred. Thank God they have been preserved. And so our course will be devoted precisely to raising this knowledge, to giving you this knowledge so that each of you can use it, and take your feasible part in this final phase, according to the results of which our civilization will either enter another peak, with all the consequences that follow from this, or we will emerge victorious.
Наша цивилизация либо войдет в очередное пике со всеми вытекающими отсюда последствиями, либо же мы выйдем победителями.
And the
И
last thing
последнее,
I would like
что
to say in
в
this
данной
regard,
связи я хотел бы сказать.
the event
События,
that is
которые
taking
происходят
place
и
and of
участниками
which we are
которого
participants,
мы
it was
являемся,
preceded about 18,000 years ago
оно
by events that
предварялось
repeat our present days.
около 18 тысяч лет назад событиями, которые повторяют наши сегодняшние дни.
I'm not
Я
just
говорю
talking
не
about the
только
warnings that were given to
о
people and that have been
предупреждениях,
preserved in ancient
которые
papyri.
были даны людям и которые сохранились в древних папирусах.
I'm
Я
talking about
говорю
what
о
mechanisms were used to slow down the evolution
том,
of our
какими
civilization.
механизмами, что было использовано для того, чтобы затормозить эволюцию нашей цивилизации.
I'm talking
Я говорю
about
о
asteroid
падении
crashes.
астероидов. За
Over the past
последние
18,000 years,
18 тысяч
there
лет
have been
было
3
3
major
крупнейших
falls with very
падения
serious
с очень
consequences.
серьезными последствиями.
Taking into account
Учитывая
cycles, cosmic
циклы,
cycles, and the
космические
information
циклы
that
и
is set
ту
out in the
информацию,
Dendarian
которая
zodiac,
изложена
which we will
в
talk about
Дендрарском
during the
зодиаке,
course,
о котором
and which
мы
I will
будем
teach you
говорить
to
во время
read,
курса,
it is
и
written that
которую я
approximately in
научу вас
5 to
читать,
6 generations, the next fall of
записано,
the largest asteroid
что
is expected.
ориентировочно через 5-6 поколений ожидается очередное падение крупнейшего астероида.
And
И
this is
вот
the essence
это
of my
и есть
task,
суть
my
моей
personal mission.
задачи и моей личной миссии.
The
Все
thing
дело
is
в том,
that next to
что
us on Earth, there is a
рядом с
certain
нами
complex that has been developing for at
на
least
Земле есть
20,000
некий
years,
комплекс,
and it performs the function of
который
protection from
последние
meteorites and asteroids.
как минимум 20 тысяч лет, а он развивающийся комплекс, выполняет функцию защиты от метеоритов и астероидов. В
First of
первую
all,
очередь от
from
тех
those meteorites
метеоритов,
that
которые
carry
несут опасные
dangerous
бактерии.
bacteria. It would
Казалось
seem that
бы,
we could in a
что
certain way
мы
expect help from
могли бы
external
определенным
civilizations
образом
in this critical
ожидать
situation.
помощи со стороны внешних цивилизаций в этой, в общем-то, критической ситуации.
But the
Но все
thing
дело
is
в
that
том,
there will
что
be no
этой
help
помощи не
until we
будет
take these
до
important
тех пор,
steps.
пока мы не сделаем вот эти важные шаги,
The steps,
шаги, которые
which will begin
начнутся
after our
после
course
нашего курса
and
и
will start
начнутся
from
с
our
нашего
course.
курса.
We need to
Нам нужно
think
подумать
about
о
how
том,
to prepare a generation of
как
children in the near
в
future
ближайшее
who
время
have a completely different level of morality
подготовить
and ethics, much
поколение
higher than we
детей,
have.
обладающих совсем иным уровнем нравственности и этики. Значительно более высоким, чем обладаем мы.
It is the level
Именно
of morality and ethics that is
уровень
one of the reasons
нравственности и
why the
этики
outer
есть одна
cosmos
из
does
причин,
not
почему
want to
внешний
talk to
космос
us.
с нами разговаривать не хочет.
We
В
still
нас
have too
до
much
сих
of
пор
Lucifer in us.
слишком много от Люцифера.
We
Мы
breathe its pulmonary
дышим
vapor.
его легочным испарением.
We
Мы
think in his
мыслим
images.
его образами. Поэтому
Therefore, giving
дача
information to
информации
people who do
людям,
not think
которые
about
не
this topic means
задумываются на
provoking
эту
an even
тему,
bigger problem.
означает спровоцировать еще большую проблему.
And we
И
will
об
also
этом мы
talk
будем
about
тоже
this.
говорить.
If we
Если мы
form this new
сформируем
generation of children on new ethical principles,
это
then I
новое
am
поколение
convinced
детей
that the outer
на
cosmos will
новых
begin to talk
этических
to them.
принципах, то я убежден, что внешний космос начнет разговаривать с ними.
One of the
Одна из
problems that
проблем, о
we
которой мы
mentioned at the
упомянули
very
в самом
beginning
начале,
is a change in all
это
cyclic
изменение
processes
всех
as a
циклических
result of a
процессов
powerful impact of
в
a series of
результате
asteroids, in particular on
мощнейшего
planet Earth,
удара
as a
серии
result of
астероидов,
which
в частности по планете Земля,
13,675 years
в
ago,
результате
planet
чего
Earth began to lose its orbit. And
13
only
675 лет
thanks to the
назад
help of external
планета Земля
civilizations,
начала
gods,
терять
if you
свою
want,
орбиту,
it was
и только
stopped where we are
благодаря
now,
помощи внешних
due to an
цивилизаций,
increase in the
богов,
mass of the
если
Earth
хотите,
by the mass of the
она
Moon.
была остановлена там, где мы сейчас находимся, за счет увеличения массы Земли на массу Луны.
The moon is really an artificial satellite that was dragged here, increased the mass of the Earth. And these texts have been preserved. We will get acquainted with them during our course. And thank God that we stayed here, but the climate has changed dramatically. It has become colder than it was. Remember the previous year, 360 days, the current 365 years. But all this has led to the fact that the energy systems that power the installation, designed to deflect meteorites, asteroids. This installation here, it receives energy due to certain effects arising from the release of energy flows by the Earth's core during certain cyclical events.
Потоков энергии ядром Земли во время определенных циклических событий.
And when the machine, the internal power system, is designed for a certain rhythm, does not receive proper impulses, that is, the energy source is depleted.
То есть энергетический источник истощается.
And recently, blank shots of this power system have been observed on meteorite asteroids. In short, I'm leading you to the fact that this installation will shut it up. But it is a colossal tool that we could use with success if we had access to it. In the coming decades, there will be more interesting events, which we will talk about on the course, which will allow our civilization. First of all, those who live on the territory of Russia, because we are tied by fate to a certain zone.
Тем, кто живет на территории России, потому что мы привязаны судьбой к определенной зоне.
That's how we get information about the real structure of the chronopoles of the planet Earth.
Хронополей планеты Земля.
We will begin to receive information about how this field is arranged, how to make transitions from one dimension to another. And thus, combining these facts with scientific research and ancient texts, we have a chance to use this installation, its capabilities, and reject this asteroid.
У нас появляется шанс воспользоваться этой установкой, ее возможностями, и отклонить данный астероид.
And it will be a large asteroid, because if we don't, the consequences of the strike will be truly catastrophic. We are talking about the fact that basically only two territories will remain, which stand on a special kind of geological grounds. The area of Tibet and the area south of Australia, New Zealand, somewhere there. Everything else will be a sadness, a big, very big sadness. For me, this is fundamentally important because this is the time when our grandchildren, our children will live. And I would like to do everything possible so that we still defend our right to life. So I think we have no choice. Let's meet, let's talk openly, let's tell the world everything that has happened in the last 15,000 years in our solar system, and what we can do for ourselves and for the planet to survive. This is very serious. We have a chance, so let's take advantage of it, and I invite you to my course in order to start this great ascent, and try to get out of this situation as winners.
Valor, tell me please, what are you going to talk about in the course?
The course, at least for now, is planned to consist of 3 modules, but it seems to me that there will be more of them. How much more will it become clearer as we develop this course and as people perceive this course and ask questions? But the main topics that we will raise will be the following. We start talking about the history of civilization in the solar system. Let's start with that. We will talk about the War of the Gods, the reasons for its beginning, and how it ended. We will talk about how the decision was made about the future of the Earth. Let's look at the sources of information about those events. The Anunnaki, their fate, their task and intellectual inheritance, is an extremely important topic, without which it is very difficult to correctly perceive all the enormous amount of spiritual information that has been accumulated by our civilization today. We will talk about the Anunnaki, their fate, their tasks and intellectual heritage. What forms and types of fauna and flora were introduced to the Earth? How was the relationship with Earthlings? Consider 3 asteroid impacts that changed the fate of the Earth, and what were the consequences? Then we will raise the question of the mechanism for restoring the intermediate hierarchy between Earth and space. We will talk about the real structure of the human energy structure, and how it is integrated into the structure of the universe on the one hand, and how the biological structures of the body, on the other hand, are integrated into this energy system. Let's talk about the great triad of exits from the wind. It will be about the caduceus of Horus, about the ant and the pyramids, and the mechanism of their influence. A very important topic is the acupuncture points of the Earth as sources of energy. Because the Anunnaki and those who came to Earth and left their mark here, they recorded information in special energy zones, dedicated to these energy acupuncture points. Accordingly, knowing how it works and where they are, you can access this information. We are going to talk about the principle of reincarnation, how to restore the memory of past incarnations, how to contact the civilizations of outer space correctly, how to conceive a child with outstanding physical, mental, and energetic abilities. We will talk about what we can do together to change the fate of our planet and our civilization. And this is the most general information about what will be on the course, and I think we will publish the details on a page on the internet, where it will be told about each module separately and what will be discussed in each of them.
будет обсуждаться.